1992, R. Kelly in public announcement debuted Born into the 90s. Released a year later, the album went platinum. Now let's go to 93. His album 12 Play is released and eventually sells more than 5 million copies. His single includes Sex Me and Bump and Grind, which become the longest running #1 R&B song in more than 30 years. Now we go to 1994. At the age of 27, R. Kelly marries a 15-year-old R&B singer named Aaliyah. The couple weds in a secret ceremony arranged by Kelly at a hotel in Chicago. The marriage is annulled months later because of Aaliyah's age. Now we go to September of that year. Aaliyah's debut album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, which Kelly produced, is certified platinum. Aaliyah tragically dies in a plane crash 7 years later, just at the young age of 22. Now let's go to 1996. R. Kelly releases his third album titled R. Kelly. A month later, he incorporates Rockland Records. His song, I Believe I Can Fly, we all remember from the Space Jam soundtrack, peaks at #2 on the Billboard Pop chart. That same year, he marries a 22-year-old Andrea Lee, a dancer from his touring group. The couple goes on to have 3 children. Now let's go to 1997. Tiffany Hawkins filed a complaint against R. Kelly alleging intentional sexual battery and sexual harassment while she was a minor. In 1998, Hawkins' lawsuit is reportedly settled for $250,000. Later in 98, Kelly won 3 Grammys for I Believe I Can Fly. And later in the year, his album R hit stores. It goes on to sell 6 million copies. In August of 2001, we find that Tracy Sampson files a lawsuit against Kelly, alleging their sex was illegal under Illinois law because he was in a position of authority over her. The case was reportedly settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Now we go to 2002, where the Chicago Sun-Times reported that it received a videotape showing that R. Kelly having sex with a minor. The paper reported Chicago police began investigating allegations about R. Kelly and the same girl 3 years earlier. At the time, the girl and her parents denied she was having sex with the singer. The same day the news breaks, Kelly performs at the opening ceremonies for the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. Now let's go to 2002, where Kelly is indicted in Chicago on child pornography charges stemming from the sex tape. He pleads not guilty and is released on a $750,000 bail. We go to 2003 now. Kelly's arrested in a Florida hotel on additional child pornography charges after investigators said that they found photos of him having sex with a girl. Charges are later dropped after the judge ruled police didn't have a warrant to search his home. 2003, Kelly has an album called Chocolate Factory and is released selling 538,000 copies just in its first week. In September of 2005, his wife asked for an order of protection from her husband, accusing the singer of hitting her when she said she wanted a divorce. In 2006, R. Kelly's brother, Kerry Kelly, says his brother offered him $50,000 in a record deal to say that he was the person in the sex video. In 2007, Kelly released his album Double Up, which peaks at #1 on the Billboard Albums chart. Now we go to 2009. Kelly and his former wife confirmed that they are divorced after 11 years of marriage. Later in that year, Crain's Chicago Business reports that a $2.9 million foreclosure is filed by J.P. Morgan Chase Bank against R. Kelly's suburban mansion. A spokesperson claimed that the singer is not having financial trouble at that time. Now let's go to 2012, where Kelly announced that he is reviving a video series called Trapped in the Closet. The project began as 5 videos for his dramatic cliffhanger songs in 2007 and eventually grows to several dozen musical chapters dealing with a web of sexual deceit. Kelly teams with IFC to premiere the old and new series and performs the rap opera at events such as a sing-along at Bonnaroo. There was talk of a Broadway show. Now we go to 2013, where Kelly's mansion was once valued at more than $5 million, sells for just $950,000 in a foreclosure auction, and this is where things start to really heat up for R. Kelly. BuzzFeed reports on parents' claims that R. Kelly brainwashed their daughters and was keeping them in an abusive cult. One woman said that she was with Kelly willingly. Following the BuzzFeed report, activists launched the, quote, hashtag Mute R. Kelly movement, calling her for boycotts of his music. Now we go to 2018, where Kelly is evicted from 2 Atlanta area homes over more than the $31,000 owed in unpaid rent. Later in that year, Time's Up campaign joins the Mute R. Kelly social media campaign and pushes for further investigation into R. Kelly's behavior. Kelly's camp responds, "We will vigorously resist this attempted public lynching of a black man who has made extraordinary contributions to our culture." Later in that year, Spotify cuts R. Kelly's music from its playlist, citing its policy on hate content and hateful conduct. Shortly after, Apple and Pandora also stopped promoting his music. Kelly's team pushes back, noting that other artists on Spotify had been accused of or convicted of crimes. Then in 2019, Lifetime airs the documentary Surviving R. Kelly, which revisited old allegations against him and brought new ones up into the spotlight. The series followed the BBC's R. Kelly Sex, Girls, and Videotapes, released the previous year, that the alleged singer was holding women against their will. Later in 2019, Lady Gaga says she will remove the duet with Kelly from streaming services. Also that year, multiple media outlets reports that Kelly and his label, Sony subsidiary REC Records, part ways. Kelly continues to deny all the allegations against him. July 11 of 2019, we see Kelly indicted by a federal grand jury in Chicago on charges including child pornography, enticement of a minor, and obstruction of justice. A separate indictment filed in the Eastern District of New York included charges of racketeering, kidnapping, forced labor, and the sexual exploitation of a child. He is arrested in Chicago once again. Later that year, Kelly's denied bail in his New York City sex abuse case after a judge agreed with prosecutors that freeing him from jail would create a risk of him fleeing or tampering with witnesses. Now we go to 2020, where Kelly pleaded not guilty in Chicago to an updated federal indictment that included child pornography charges and allegations involving a new accuser, while prosecutors say more charges alleging yet another victim were upcoming. Kelly's manager is arrested in 2020 later that year in California on charges that he threatened a shooting at a Manhattan theater 2 years ago, forcing an evacuation and the cancellation of the screening of a documentary addressing allegations that the singer had sexually abused women and girls. Later, in 2021, a man is sentenced to 8 years in prison for setting fire to a car in Florida, what authorities say was an attempt to intimidate a potential witness in the sex trafficking trial. In this past June, prosecutors say R. Kelly deserves at least 25 years behind bars for abusing children. And today, with the latest update to this long saga of a timeline for R. Kelly, Kelly is sentenced to 30 years in prison for that New York case.